What if the issue is not that you are behind? What if the issue is not that you are invisible? What if you have simply been editing yourself to fit rooms you were never called to shrink in? Today, we are closing this mini-series with a conversation about blueprint energy, not ego, not arrogance, not performance, authorship. This is about moving from background energy into identity-led living, because you are not the background, you are the blueprint. Stay with us.
Welcome to the She Thinks She's Cute podcast, a storytelling platform exploring perception, identity, and the moments that quietly shape who we become. Created and hosted by Denise Williams. This work began on the stage, but it developed into a broader storytelling platform, a space for honesty, for perspective, and for the conversations we may not usually say out loud. Here, we don't shrink to fit. We don't dim to survive the room. We show up, aware, expanding, and becoming. This is She Thinks She's Cute. Original stories, intentional impact. Let's begin.
Welcome back to the She Thinks She's Cute podcast in our special mini-series, Main Character Mindset. Be the voice, not the remix. I'm Tonya, and I'm here with Denise Williams, the founder of She Thinks She's Cute podcast. Denise, we have talked about voice originality and getting back to the pen, but today feels like the identity level close. Today is not just about what you create, it is about who you are when you create it.
Yes, Tonya, and welcome everyone. It's great to be back here with you, Tonya, for another great episode. And that is exactly where we are going today. This episode is about something a little quieter and deeper. It is about the moment you realize I have been living, creating, deciding, posting, speaking, or even waiting from background energy. And once you see that, you have a decision to make. Do I keep adjusting myself for the room, or do I start building from identity? That is what Blueprint Energy episode is about.
Let's start there, because some people may hear background energy and immediately think it means being passive or shy. But that is not always what it looks like. Sometimes background energy is very functional. Sometimes it looks productive. Sometimes it even looks successful.
Exactly, Tonya. Background energy does not always look like hiding. Sometimes it looks like overthinking, delaying, constantly checking the room before you trust what God placed in you, or editing your language so nobody misunderstands you, or watering down your idea because you do not want people to think you are doing too much. Sometimes it looks like waiting until everyone else approves before you move. And that is why it is hard to recognize in some cases, because on the outside, you still may be showing up. You still may be creating. You still may be serving. You may still be helping, but internally, you're not leading from identity. You are responding to the room.
That is a strong distinction, because a person can be visible and still be operating in background energy.
Absolutely. You can be on the flyer and still be in background energy. You can have the title and still be in background energy. You can be on the flyer. Like I mentioned, you can be the one everyone calls on and still be operating from a place of hesitation, permission seeking, and self-editing. Background energy is not about where people place you, where people place us. It's about where we place ourselves internally. And some of us do not slide into background energy because we lack ability. We slide into it because somewhere along the way, we learn to protect ourselves by minimizing ourselves. We learn to be agreeable, to be impressive, but not too disruptive. We learn to be gifted, but not too clear, to be present, but not too powerful. And after a while, that becomes our posture. And you don't even realize you're shrinking anymore. You just call it being careful.
So let's define it clearly. When you say blueprint energy, what do you mean?
How do I define blueprint energy? And for the sake of this episode, blueprint energy is authorship. It is the inner posture of a person who has stopped adjusting for the room and started deciding from identity. It's not ego. It's not, I do not need anyone. It's not, I am better than anyone. It's not a personality type. Blueprint energy is what happens when you become rooted enough to say, this is who I am. This is how I am called to build. This is what I know I carry. This is the pace that keeps me moving forward and in sync with my vision. This is the standard I cannot keep lowering. And this is the voice I cannot keep editing. It is authorship. And authorship matters, Tonya, because if you do not author your life, your work, and your voice, you will keep handing the pen to whoever makes you feel safest in the moment.
That line right there, because safety can become a trap if we are not discerning.
I agree, Tonya. And that is one of the anchor points for this episode. Safe is not always true. Sometimes safe just means familiar. It means no one is challenging you. Or you can stay small and nobody will question it. You could be surrounded by people who benefit from you not becoming too clear. Sometimes safe means you do not have to risk being misunderstood. But what is true may require something different. It may require you to speak. It may require you to release, to stop explaining, to move at a pace that other people do not understand, and to build what has not been validated yet. So we have to be honest. There are times when what feels safe is simply what allows us to avoid becoming.
That is uncomfortable but true, because many people are not choosing background energy because they do not care. They're choosing it because it feels safer than being fully seen.
Yes. And we have to be honest about that without turning on ourselves. Many of us learn to shrink because it felt safer than being fully seen, like you just mentioned. But once we recognize the pattern, we do not have to keep repeating it. Truth gives us a choice. And once we have a choice, we can begin to move differently.
Denise, let's make this practical. What does blueprint energy sound like compared to background energy?
Great question, Tanya. Blueprint energy sounds like this is who I am, even if it's not a popular version. This is my pace, and I'm not apologizing for it. I can be kind without being available to everything. I will not betray my message to fit in a moment. I do not need to become a copy to be credible. I can learn from others without losing myself. I can honor what is working for someone else without making it my assignment. I do not have to explain every decision to people who are not responsible for the outcome. I can be misunderstood and still remain true to what I know. I can build quietly and still build powerfully. That is blueprint energy. It is steady. It is clear. It is not trying to dominate the room. It is just no longer asking the room for permission.
And what does background energy sound like?
Background energy sounds like, let me see what everyone else is doing first. I do not want to post this because what if they judge it? Maybe I should change it so it sounds more like what people expect. I know this is what I want to say, but will people think it's too much? I need them to understand before I move. I will wait until I feel completely safe. I do not want to make anyone uncomfortable. Background energy sounds like maybe I should lower the standard so no one else feels left out. I should probably explain myself at least one more time. And I do not want to seem difficult. And here's the thing, some of these thoughts, they sound reasonable, and that is why they are dangerous, because they do not always sound like fear. Sometimes they can actually sound like wisdom. But wisdom, one thing about wisdom is wisdom produces clarity. Fear produces delay. Wisdom helps you to move with discernment. Fear keeps asking for one or more sign, one or more opinion, one more reassurance, one more approval, one more reason not to trust yourself.
That distinction is important because there's nothing wrong with getting wise counsel. There's nothing wrong with pausing. There's nothing wrong with considering timing. But there is a difference between discernment and disappearance.
Exactly. And that is where we have to be honest. We have to ask ourselves, am I pausing because I'm being wise? Or am I pausing because I'm afraid to be seen in my true, authentic voice? Am I taking this time to refine? Or am I delaying because I do not want to be judged? Am I being thoughtful, or am I waiting for someone else's confidence to become my permission? That is the mirror, Tonya.
Denise, let's talk about the cost. Because background energy may feel safe, but it is not free. What does it cost a person over time?
Great question. The cost of background energy, what does it cost a person over time? It costs your voice, clarity, momentum, identity, and sometimes it costs trust in yourself, because every time you know what is true and you keep choosing what is acceptable, something in you takes note of that. Every time you soften the truth you were supposed to say, delay the move because you're waiting to feel safe, over explaining to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, or lowering the standard to keep the room comfortable, something in you knows. And after a while, you do not just feel tired, you feel disconnected. Not because you do not have purpose, but because you have been negotiating with your purpose.
That is heavy, Denise, but it's honest. Sometimes the exhaustion is not from the work, it is from all the adjusting.
Exactly. It is exhausting to keep asking, how do I make this version of me acceptable? That is labor. It is emotional labor, creative labor, spiritual labor, mental labor. And people may not see it because on the outside, you're still performing well, but inside, you're tired because you're building with one hand and holding yourself back with the other. There's a cost for that. You can produce from background energy, but you cannot fully become from background energy. You can function there, you can survive there, you can even be praised in that place, but you cannot build what requires your whole voice while giving people the edited version of you. It just doesn't happen that way.
And sometimes the edited version gets applause.
So true, Tanya. Sometimes that edited version does get applause, and that is part of the trap. The edited version may be easier for people to receive. It may be more marketable. It may be more predictable. It may make more people comfortable, but if it's not true, it will eventually feel like a costume. And Blueprint Energy says, I am no longer willing to be celebrated, wow, for a version of me that is disconnected from who I really am. That is not rebellion making that choice. That is maturity.
Let's come back to the line you named earlier. Safe is not always true. That feels like one of the turning points of this episode.
Available now on Amazon, search Strategic Stillness by Denise Williams. Start your next season with Strategic Stillness.
It is, because many people, or some people, are not choosing wrong. They're choosing safe. And safe can look noble. It can look responsible, humble. Looks like you're keeping the pace. Safe can look like, I just do not want any drama. But sometimes what we call safe is really self-abandonment with better language. That is why we have to ask, is this safe because it is wise, or is this safe because it lets me avoid the responsibility of becoming clear? Is it safe because God is telling me to wait? Or is it safe because I do not want to be uncomfortable? Is it safe because it protects the assignment? Is it safe because it protects the version of me that does not want to take up space? These are hard questions, but they are also necessary questions, because what is true does not always feel comfortable, Tonya. Sometimes what is true, it can feel exposed, quiet. Sometimes it feels like walking away from the version of yourself that other people knew how to manage. Sometimes what is true feelings, it feels like being misunderstood without trying to defend your way back into approval. And this is where blueprint energy begins, not when everyone claps or when everyone understands or the room gives you permission. It begins when you make a decision, when you decide, I cannot keep betraying what is true just because what is familiar, it feels safer.
Denise, that is a grown decision, period.
It is. And Tonya, it usually does not come with noise. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes there's a quiet shift. You stop saying yes so quickly, stop explaining every boundary, posting what feels performative, building from comparison, or letting urgency override discernment. You stop needing everyone to understand the blueprint before you honor it. That is the shift.
Now, I think this is important. Denise, when people hear words like authorship, identity, sovereignty, standards, and boundaries, they may think it means becoming hard or untouchable, but that's not what you're saying.
Not at all. Sovereignty does not mean harshness. It means clarity without apology. I can be loving and still be clear. I can be generous and still have limits. I can collaborate and still have standards. I can listen and still not abandon my voice. I can honor feedback without handing over the blueprint. I can be humble without being hidden. I can be kind without being constantly available. That is maturity. Blueprint energy does not require you to become cold. It requires you to be honest. And sometimes honesty will feel comfortable to people who benefited from your uncertainty. But that does not mean you are wrong. It means the relationship, the room, or the pattern now has to adjust to your clarity.
That is powerful because sometimes people confuse peace with being agreeable.
I agree, Tonya. And for me, peace is what becomes possible when you stop betraying yourself to keep everyone else settled. And this is why we have to redefine what it means to be the main character. In this series, main character mindset, the energy has never been about attention. It's never been about being the loudest, taking over every room. It's about authorship. It's about returning to your voice. It's about living from identity instead of reaction, building something that has your fingerprints on it because you stopped trying to copy what made someone else look successful. Blueprint energy is not about being above people. It is about being rooted within yourself.
So when we say the subtopic is from background to blueprint, building from identity, what does building from identity actually look like?
Great question, Tonya. What does building from identity actually look like? It looks like asking better questions. Not will they like this, but is this true? Not will this make me look successful, but is this true to what I carry? Not what are they doing, but what am I called to build? Not how do I make this more acceptable, but how do I make this more honest? Not how do I avoid being misunderstood, but how do I stay clear even if I am misunderstood? So, building from identity means the source changes. You are no longer building from pressure, from comparison, from the fear of being left behind, from the need to prove you belong. You're building from rootedness. You're building from the truth of who you are, what you carry, what you value, and who you are responsible for. And let me say this clearly. Identity-led building will not always be fast. It will not always trend. It will not always get immediate applause, but it will be sustainable. And that is so important. And there's something powerful about a person who can move without chasing every signal around them. That is so powerful.
That connects back to the whole series: voice, originality, back to the pen, and now blueprint energy.
Absolutely. Episode by episode, we have been walking towards this. So if you're listening and you have not listened to the previous episodes, I encourage you to do so if possible. We've been walking through this because once you clear the noise around your voice, you have to decide what you're going to build with it. And once you stop letting trend talk you out of what is true, you have to take responsibility for originality as a lifestyle. And once you get back to the pen, you have to decide whether you're going to keep handing the pen away. And now the blueprint energy, we are saying build from identity. Do not build from applause, from fear, from comparison, from the pressure to be understood by people who are not assigned to help you steward the vision that God has assigned to you. Build from identity, because when the source is clear, the structure will stand.
Let's land this with the action step. This week, the practice is to create one blueprint boundary, not 10, not a whole life overhaul. One small, clear decision that protects either your pace, your voice, or your standards. Denise, walk us through that.
Of course, Tonya. A blueprint boundary is a decision that protects the version of you that is building from identity. It does not have to be dramatic, announced, and it does not have to come with a long explanation. It's simply a boundary that says, I'm not going to keep abandoning this part of me. So choose one. It may need to be a boundary that protects your pace. That could sound like, I will not rush a decision just because someone else is uncomfortable with my process. I will not measure my progress by someone else's timeline. I will give myself time to think before I commit, and I will not let urgency make decisions that discernment should be making. Or maybe you need a boundary that protects your voice, and that could sound like, I will not rewrite my message until it becomes unrecognizable. I will not silence what is true just because it may not be popular. I will create before I consume, what everyone else is creating. Or I will stop asking for feedback from people who do not understand my assignment. Or maybe you need a boundary that protects your standards. And those could sound like I will not lower the quality of my work to make other people comfortable. I will not keep saying yes to opportunities that pull me away from my assignment. I will stay true to my assignment. I will not explain standards to people who are committed to calling them difficult. I will not let access to me become the price of being liked. So choose one, just one, because the goal is not to perform growth. The goal is to practice identity-led decision making.
Denise, that is so important because sometimes we make growth too big and then we do not do anything.
Exactly. And one boundary can change your posture. One honest decision can interrupt an old pattern. One protected pace can preserve your strength. One protected voice can bring you back to yourself. Or one protected standard can actually remind us that we are not hard to work with just because we are no longer easy to misuse. That is blueprint energy in practice.
As we close this mini series, what do you want the listener to leave with?
Wow. As we close this mini series, main character mindset, I want to leave you with this. You may have been editing yourself. You may have been waiting for safety when truth was already calling. You may have been building from approval when you were meant to build from identity. And the good news is you can choose differently, not loudly, not defensively, not with a big announcement, just clearly. You can come back to your voice, to your pen, to your standards, to your pace, to the blueprint, because you are not the black background. You are the blueprint. And the blueprint does not need to compete with the room.
That is the capstone, and it brings the whole series together beautifully. Main character mindset is not about chasing attention. It is about authorship. It is about identity. It is about voice. It is about not becoming a remix of something that was never assigned to you. This has been Main Character Mindset, Blueprint Energy. Your action step this week is simple. Create one blueprint boundary that protects your pace, your voice, or your standards. One small, clear decision. That is where the shift begins. And remember, main character mindset. Be the voice, not the remix. Denise, close us out.
Absolutely, Tonya. And it has been a pleasure to serve with you on another thought-provoking podcast. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the She Thinks She's Cute podcast and for walking with us through the Main Character Mindset series. My hope is that this series helped you hear yourself again, not the version of you shaped by comparison or edited by fear, or the version waiting for the room to approve what God has already placed inside of you. The real voice, the honest voice, the steady voice. And as you move through this week, I want you to pay attention to the places where you have been operating in background energy, not to condemn yourself, but to choose differently. Create one blueprint boundary, protect your pace, protect your voice, protect your standards, and build from identity. Because your originality is not a problem to solve. Your voice is not too much. Your timing is not less valuable because it is different. And your blueprint does not need to be borrowed to be valued. You are not the background. You are the blueprint. If this podcast has been helpful or you found this to be empowering, I want to encourage you to share it with someone, to download it, to save it, return to it as often as needed. And until the next time, stay intentional, stay steady, and keep building from who you are. This is Denise Williams, and you have been listening to the She Thinks She's Cute podcast.
She Thinks She's Cute stage production is now available for booking. Looking for a powerful stage experience for your women's conference, church event, university, corporate gathering, community event, or performing arts venue? She Thinks She's Cute is a compelling live production that sparks conversation, challenges assumptions, and reminds audiences of the power of empathy, healing, and unity among women. Bring this unforgettable production to your stage. Visit SheThinksSheCute.com and click the booking button for more details. She Thinks She's Cute stage production. Assumption is not always truth.
Some seasons do not unfold the way you planned. When my stage production had to be postponed, I found myself in a season I did not choose and could not push past. What felt like interruption revealed itself as instruction. What felt like delay became protection. What felt like stillness proved to be strategic. And in the middle of that season, I wrote a book, Strategic Stillness, When Pausing Protects the Promise. This is not a book about waiting passively. It's about recognizing when restraint is wisdom. It is for leaders, creatives, and vision holders who have felt the pressure to keep going, even when the body, their spirit, or their circumstances were asking for a pause. If progress has slowed, plans have shifted, or movement feels blocked, this book was written for you.
Available now on Amazon. Search Strategic Stillness by Denise Williams. Start your next season with Strategic Stillness.
Thank you for listening to the She Thinks She's Cute podcast. If this found you at the right moment, hold it, sit with it, share it, let it work. A space for thought-provoking stories and conversations. Created and hosted by Denise Williams. The story continues. We'll meet again in the next conversation. Until then, stay cute, stay aware, stay aligned, and stay becoming. She Thinks She's Cute. Original stories. Intentional impact.
Visit SheThinksSheCute.com. She Thinks She's Cute is a founder-led creative brand developing original, narrative-driven works across stage, experiential formats, and future screen projects, centered on perception, identity, and the unspoken dynamics that shape how we see ourselves and one another. Original stories, intentional impact. SheThinksSheCute.com.
She thinks she's cute, yes, she is. Every step she takes, she walks in power. She thinks she's cute, and she is. She thinks she's cute, and she is, yes.
She Thinks She's Cute stage production is now available for booking. Looking for a powerful stage experience for your women's conference, church event, university, corporate gathering, community event, or performing arts venue? She Thinks She's Cute is a compelling live production that sparks conversation, challenges assumptions, and reminds audiences of the power of empathy, healing, and unity among women. Bring this unforgettable production to your stage. Visit SheThinksSheCute.com and click the booking button for more details. She Thinks She's Cute stage production. Assumption is not always truth.